Thank you for joining us. The Columbian is pleased to welcome one of the candidates for state treasurer, Dwayne Davidson. And unfortunately, the other candidate, your challenger, and I'm going to screw this up, Mike Pelliciotti, I believe. We have some technical difficulties. He's not able to join us now. We will be meeting with him later, and we'll interview both candidates. And Dwayne, as you know, we are recording this. We will post it unedited on our website, and we'll do the same for Mike as well. And with that, let's go to introduction. Scott?
Scott Campbell here. I'm the retired publisher of the Columbian and still on the editorial board.
And Callie?
I'm Callie Hare. I cover politics for the Columbian, and I will be covering this interview as a reporter, but I won't be participating.
And then Dwayne, why don't just take a minute or two, give us a little bit of background, explain why you were running, and then we'll move on to specific policy questions. So go ahead.
Okay, real quick introduction. I basically, my background is in finance. I grew up on a dairy farm and timber family in Carnation, Washington, and seeing that was a way of life that was kind of disappearing. I moved to Ellensburg and got my CPA at Central Washington University. Met my wife there, and we raised. She was East Washingtonian, so that kind of cemented the deal that I was going to stay in Eastern Washington for a while, and ran for county treasurer. I first went to work as a CPA, and then I went to work for the state auditor's office, and then I got my interest was piqued auditing local governments. I thought, well, maybe I ought to run for office. Never thought about politics before, and that started a 4-term career as Benton County treasurer. And then I was recruited by the party to run for a state treasurer. As many of you know, because I was in the interview process last time, I almost backed out of that race halfway through the race. Tragedy hit the family, and I lost my wife during that campaign. And I technically actually backed out for a while, but was encouraged to get back into the race by my kids. It did kind of an intervention. They're kind of that way. And my youngest daughter, who was only 18 years old, took over being the campaign manager, which is really has bonded for me. And she's still helping out in the campaign this year and social media. So I got to, I'm just finishing my first term as your state treasurer, and really proud about some of the accomplishments I've been able to do with an absolute excellent staff that I've been able to assemble. Just some of the most awesome financial people you'll ever meet, and so that's just kind of a quick little bio about me.
Sure, great. Well, thank you, and thanks again for joining us. Just offhand, how large is the staff in the treasurer's office, and what is your annual budget?
Actually, the annual operating budget is kind of hard to decipher because of the fact we've got it in several different buckets. I'd have to get back to you on what, if we add all those up, the total is. The bulk of it is, well, first of all, the employees, let's start there. I'm approved for 68 FTEs. Right now, we're only at 60. So we're running a pretty lean staff right now. And so it's one of the smaller state agencies. State Treasurer's Office has been made very efficient over time because, you know, technology helps us do our job a lot. Our Treasurer's Office in Washington State is somewhat different than most states, where most states are paid out of, the treasurer is paid out of the general fund. And we're not. We're actually paid out of a revolving fund of fees that we charge the agencies for investing their balances. So it's kind of almost kind of proprietary, it's kind of unique. And so we've got different budgets associated with the debt and the investments, and so to put all those together, I have to get back to you on that. But to answer the question, we're right at approximately 60-some employees.
Okay. Now, obviously, things have been kind of turned upside down by the coronavirus pandemic. How will that affect what you're off to, and how should finances move forward once we get past this?
Well, directly as an office, how it's affected us is we really see the challenges that state agencies are faced. Like I said, we charge a rate for our services. I have cut that rate now 2 or 3 times to now we're at 20 basis points, which is the lowest in state history. And I still think we're going to be able to make it by doing the cost cutting and watching expenditures internally ourselves. So in a very direct way, it's affected us because I'm trying to help out by cutting our rate. That saves those agencies from paying our office as much to help them deal with their own budget cuts. And furloughs and everything else that the state is doing. Most of the COVID relief money that came in, of course, is in the Treasury for safekeeping, and we administer, the actual investments associated with it and the handling of the money. But as far as allocating that money out to the state, that's over in the governor's office. They're making most of the policy decisions on that. However, there was one element of COVID relief that was this loan program that was set up to help local governments and the state, but state and their municipalities, and take out a loan basically to make up for cash flow deficits, interruptions of their income stream. The terms were really not very good. There was a short payback period. The interest rates were not
good for the borrowers, or not good for. Okay,
we're good for the borrowers, which would be local governments.
Right.
The interest rates were higher than they could get at market now, and so this program that was created by the federal government. I wrote a letter to our entire congressional delegation that said thanks but no thanks. Washington State could deal without this, because I viewed it like paid. I called it. I got chastised once, but maybe that was a little bit too blunt. But I called it payday loans for governments, is what it was kind of came up to. And as far as I know, it hasn't caught on very well throughout the country, and we haven't done any of those in Washington State. So I had several calls back from our congressional members, both Democrats and Republicans. Congressman Heck called back. Some of the Republicans called back. Also wanted to know why I sent that letter and why I was so kind of critical of that issue. And I told them, I says, it wasn't a program that really helped us out much. I think that the only way, unfortunately, the governments are going to be able to deal with this is, we can't. This is tough times. And agencies are just going to have to really basically tighten up, because to not do that is going to require some additional taxes. And I don't think that that's something that's going to help businesses emerge from this, is to get hit with a bunch of new taxes. We're already going to be suffering some issues with the unemployment fund and the losses that occurred over there. That's why I've been very, very critical of the fact that we haven't gone into special session. You look back in the last few years, special session has almost become the norm. And
Sure.
And now here this year, we haven't got, and we got some real issues that we could be dealing with right now. And so I've been openly critical of the fact that the governor hasn't called a special session.
Now, if he does call a special session, what role will your office play in helping to develop policy, or would you try to guide the legislature? Do you have an idea of what measures should be required, or do you just sit back, wait for them to determine policy, and then you enact it?
Oh, no, we can't do that. I mean, we helped to develop the fiscal notes associated with the legislation. We have to interface both sides also of getting financial advice. This is interesting. The state constitution set this up. First of all, I appreciate that we are separately elected. I think that that's a good check and balance for the treasurer. I don't quite understand the partisan nature of why the position is necessarily partisan. I didn't understand that as a county treasurer. All the county positions of auditor and county treasurer and coroner, for crying out loud. Why do we have a partisan coroner? I mean, none of them make sense, and it doesn't make sense to me about this state. But it is what it is. And so, come election time, we got to all put on our political hat, and we got to go out and recruit, support from where we have. But then as soon as I'm sworn into office for that next term, I've got to be as non-partial as I possibly can. And that involves my job as treasurer. Right now, I can tell you that I have staff that are helping a portion of the legislature, certain individuals that want to pass a carbon tax. They've been consulting with my staff about what that would look like, how that could get bonded and stuff. I'm not necessarily personally for any new taxes, including a carbon tax, but I don't get a vote in that. I can voice my opinion. I can try to help shape policy, but I'm not the legislature. I'm an elected executive, elected administrator of a department. And so I've got to lend real help to those that may have different political views than mine, because that's a treasurer's job. And so I'll give if I can, I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but I'll give you a perfect example of how this can happen. When I was a county treasurer, I basically was against the legalization of cannabis, legalization of marijuana. I took a very aggressive stance against that, partially due to the fact that this is kind of a matter of public record. So I just tell people, I'm a recovering alcoholic myself with a couple of decades of experience. So substance abuse is something that I have firsthand knowledge of. And I just had a negative, opinion of that. But guess what? It passed anyway. The majority of the citizens of the state wanted that. So now I'm the treasurer of a state where we have a major revenue source of being Canada's dollars, and they can't bank their dollars. And that's a real issue. And so I have taken up this issue to, I lobbied for executive position with the National Association of State Treasurers. I was on the executive board. I represented the Western states as a vice president, and I was the chairman of the banking committee for the National Association of State Treasurers. And there, Washington State dropped a proposal, a white paper, to the National Association of State Treasurers for reform of the cannabis banking laws. Sure. And I can tell you, I got a lot of pushback from my own political party about that one, because around the state, there's lots of states that are red states that it's not legal yet, and I was getting pushback from them. But I said, hey guys, we've got a real dilemma here that I'm trying to. I'm not proposing that there's a change in policy in your particular state, but we need some help here in this issue. And I was glad to report that we actually got that position paper, white paper, whatever you want to call it. We got that passed. And unfortunately, it hasn't led to reform of those, although I just heard this morning that they're part of the MORE Act that the Congress is going to be acting on later, does have provisions in it for the cannabis issue. So I thought it was going to.
So they tried to sneak that in.
Yeah. So it sounds like maybe we'll get some relief in that regard anyway. So all that was meant, that whole statement was meant to say sometimes our office is called on a lot to help out formation of policy. And sometimes if I was a legislator, I'd be opposed to that policy. And if I see additional taxes or something big come down the pike that I think would be detrimental to the health of the state, I'm going to be vocal about it. But in the end of the day, I don't have a vote. One of those areas that I harp about a lot, to some people's annoyance, is those that advocate for creation of a state bank. I'm not, necessarily. I'm not for that. I don't see that the state manages I think that would just be a terrible shift of risk to the taxpayers for creation of something like that. So I've been very vocal about that.
But you do see the state treasurer position as somewhat of a bully pulpit.
Yes, it definitely is. People, yeah.
And it's interesting that you bring this up and mention some things that you might personally be opposed to, but if they're for the good of the state, or if the state passes it, you will work to enact that. Because I noticed that your opponent, on his campaign materials, he prominently mentions that you support Donald Trump, and he doesn't. Is that accurate?
Well, I'll tell you about this issue. Where he's getting that from is during the editorial board interviews for my election. I was almost all the way through them, and it was with a stranger. And they pressed me on who I was going to be voting for personally. Mm-hmm. That's how they framed the question. Who are you going to vote for personally? And I normally find a way to just mm-hmm. I don't see how that has any bearing on my job and what I do. But I compromised on my senators and just said basically I'm voting for Trump.
Now, was that this year or 4 years ago?
4 years ago.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
And I have not made any statement since. Okay. So when he says that, I don't know where he's getting that this election cycle. This time I've been a little bit more disciplined about not stating that, because I really don't know what bearing that has on my job. There are certain things I think that President Trump has done that has benefited our economy and the way things are going. There are some things I've been very critical of the administration for. They eliminated our ability to do advance refunding. I helped write a position paper against that through the National Association of State Treasurers. So just like with cannabis, I go to odds with people in my own party, including the president, on issues if I don't think it's to the best of the state. And so I just don't. Like I said, this is a partisan position by the Constitution, but I just hate it when the position has to become that political, because, I ran to get this job to be treasurer of the state. I'm not aspiring to do anything more. I'm not going to be running for lieutenant governor someday or something like that. I'm a treasurer. I'm a CPA and a treasurer. And those that try to make this job that political, I'm more inclined to agree with, some of my predecessors, like Mike Murphy, who tried to run legislation himself that made it a nonpartisan position. And while he likes to, as my opponent really likes to try to make a big deal about the Trump statement some time ago, I'd like to point out the fact that, I've never given that campaign any money. I'm just not going to take a position on that. All I'm going to point out is that I have got good, strong bipartisan support this election cycle. I've got two former state treasurers that are Democrats endorsing me. I got a former state auditor, Brian Sontag, that was a Democrat that's endorsing me. I've got several county treasurers that are Democrats that's endorsing me again. And I think that that's what people should be looking for, is that person that doesn't try to politicize this office more, but takes us out of that rhetoric and out of that area and be the type of person I try to aspire to be, which is someone that tries to get things done in spite of the politics.
Mm-hmm. So are you going to tell us who you're going to vote for president? No. Oh, okay. Just checking. Scott, do you have a question, or should I keep going? Oh, sorry, you were on mute there. I will keep going then. So tell me, Dwayne, are changes needed in how the how the treasurer's office approaches the job? It is. Do we need to do things drastically different, or will a steady kind of guide us through this?
I'm sorry, Greg, you were really, I only got part of that.
Oh, I apologize. I think I have a bad connection here. Does the pandemic change how your office should approach its job?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think we need to be really focused on the fact that we just can't do much to hurt the economy anymore. I think that our office ought to be supportive of efforts that try to help local governments out, and we're directly involved with a couple of those. A couple of the programs that we do in the Treasurer's Office is the local program. What that is that's a program that takes small debt issuances from small entities, some of them that might not be able to bond themselves because they're just like a little, a fire district or school district someplace. And we wait till we get to about 30 or 20 or 30 of those together, and then we go out to market, and we are able to use the state's credit rating to be able to basically economies of scale is employed here, and we're able to get them financing at a much cheaper rate than we could otherwise get. I'm really proud about that program. We've increased that from 3 times a year to or 2 times a year to now 3 times a year. The other program that we started, and actually I got this legislation passed, and here comes a train, so just I'll talk a little bit louder. Legislation I got passed a couple of years ago. That's on the debt side. This other program that's brand new is called the SMA program, Separately Managed Accounts program. And this is on the investment asset side of local governments. We've ran the local government investment pool, which is basically entities all throughout the Washington state. Their short-term cash is invested with us. And we run one of the best pools in the nation, only charge about 7 basis points for fees, and just got our 23rd annual consecutive clean audit and excellence in reporting. That's worked really, really well, but there was a void with entities that had some cash that could be identified as longer term than that real short duration stuff, something where they'd be able to make a little bit more interest on money that they didn't need for a couple years, for cash flow in a couple years. And that was a real problem because there was some interest earnings that were being passed by because of that. And so we've got this program called the SMA program, and we ran a test pilot project with Pierce County. This is available to counties, cities, other local governments. Now we got the city of Redmond. We're in negotiations right now with the city of Bellevue. We got Sammamish Hills. And so we're bringing these entities under, and we are able to manage their long-term portfolio for them. And the results of that, even in this really low interest environment, still the results of that have been very favorable. Positive comments about that. And that's something that was created just a couple of years ago. So I feel really, really good about that. The other program that we did to help out local governments is when I came on board here, I started hearing about some of these different state programs, and I suddenly become aware that, here I thought 4-term county treasurer, and I consider myself well-versed. I hadn't heard of some of these programs before. So I did a census of state programs that offer loans and grants. And we wound up with 140 of the programs. And I looked at my assistant treasurer, she was also a county treasurer before I hired her as assistant treasurer, and said, "How many of these programs did you previously know about?" And she says, "Maybe half." And I said, "That's even better than me." There's a problem in government if you don't have if people don't know about things that are available to them. And so I went to the legislature and they said, and I asked them if we could create a directory of this. They turned me down. It was not much money either, but it was just one of those things, I guess. And so I just tightened things up in the treasurer's office and asked for extra dedication from the employees. And in just a little over a year's time, we launched the website called the Fund Directory, which provides local governments that they put in some criteria and it matches them up with possible resource that's available to them quickly in the way of grants and loans. And so it's called the Fund Directory, and I'm really, really proud of that. I tell my staff I want to take the next level. I want to make it like a phone app, and they can right swipe and left swipe like a dating. But they didn't find humor in that.
Yeah, and one thing you were a county treasurer for 4 terms, and are those 4-year terms?
Yeah,
so
and I was
16 years.
And to be honest, I was actually in my 4th term, so I didn't play for it. So I was in halfway through my 4th term.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to check that. So then nowadays as state treasurer, what keeps you up at night? What is your biggest concern?
There's several things that bother me. I worry a lot about the health of some of our local governments, and that's why I'm trying to continue to develop as many programs that can help them as much as we possibly can. That bothers me. This concept that some have about a state bank worries me a lot. And the reason why that does, I don't mean to, vilify this issue too much, but it just takes a lot of money to create a bank, a state bank. And I know that there is, only a couple pots of money, if you will, here at the state. And I sit on direct oversight of both of them. And one of those is the local government investment pool. I consider that other people's money, so that should be off limits because it's other people's money. And it's the city of Bellevue, the city of Vancouver, cash. And then the second one concerns me more, and that's the pension reserves.
Sure.
I think that Washington State has one of the best pension systems in the nation. Mm-hmm. Comparing myself to treasurers around the nation, I can honestly say that. Our 17 pension funds, you blend them all together, we got about a 90% funded status. When I came to office, it was like 87%. We're at 90% now funded status for those. It's one of the best pension systems in the nation. And we still have, as part of that, we have our direct benefit, plan. And so there's talk. There was even one of the proposed legislation just this last year for creation of state bank, that those funds were listed as a potential for funding of the pensions.
How many states have a state bank?
North Dakota.
That's the only one?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's an anomaly that was created way back. It was almost like a Grange movement way back at the turn of the last century, because there was no banks up there and they needed it for financing for the farmers. And so that's what I understand is mostly like and I think it's kind of like it's evolved into something that's not exactly what people that want a state bank conceptualize with the state bank. So I would not want to see pension reserves put up for something like that. That's $130 billion. And if that money gets blown or something like that, the pension obligation doesn't go away.
Sure.
It's still there, and people have to come up with, those reserves have to be replenished. And so I would hate to see us ever get in a situation like, there's some states out there like Illinois and New Jersey. They're like 25%, 26% funded status for the pension. Sure. How are those people ever going to get out of that?
Sure. Well, and Oregon's gone through a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, Great. Well, Dwayne, tell you what, give us your final pitch for why voters should support you, and feel free to mention any notable endorsements.
I really like the fact that I've got so many county treasurers, both Republican and Democrats, endorsing me. Of course, I've got the entire Republican legislature supporting me, just being handed mainstream Republicans. Even got one of the union, the state employees did a dual endorsement in the Washington Farm Bureau. So we got a lot of good support. What I like about my endorsements and my support is it shows the bipartisan nature of how I like to run things. And so I think that I'm running for one other term. I know I'm not supposed to do this. All advisors tell me not to do this, but I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that if I do win again, it'll probably be my last term. I'm going to two-term it, and I'll be happy with that. And be trying to find someone that could take it over from me at that point. I just want to be a treasurer, and this is what I like to do. I think I bring value into this. I'm really proud of the staff that I bring. I brought such talent to the treasurer's office that I can trust them to do. I've appointed many of them to some of the boards that I serve on the state level, so that I could take a more active role at the national level. Mm-hmm. And I feel really, really proud about that. I know that my opponents actually criticized me about that and said I've not attended, even though it's right in the RCW that the assistant treasurer can be my delegate on those boards. That doesn't mean that I don't pay attention to what's going on there. I mean, I oversee those individuals, and I think they're doing an excellent job. And it's my current assistant treasurer. My current assistant treasurer is Arissa Rivera. She's done that. Matter of fact, the two people that have done the pension board assignment, I've got several committees I'm on, of course, but the two that have done that, I like to point out the fact that there's been 3 women assistant treasurers in Washington State history, and I've appointed 2 of them. And so I'm really, really proud of that they're just extremely capable individuals, both of which could have been good state treasurers. One of them maybe, hopefully, will be someday, the current one. And I'm really proud of the diversity I've brought to the office in some of my hires, which is obviously more diverse than it was when I took office. I've got the state to a AAA bond rating with Moody's, and that's the first time in state history that we have ever had a AAA bond rating. And so those are some of my last accomplishments. Just like to have another term, just want to be the treasurer, and I'll try to be as fair and equitable with both sides if I get elected.
Great. Well, Dwayne, thank you very much. I apologize again for technical difficulties that prevented Mike from joining us. We will meet with him at another time. And anyway, well, thank you very much and good luck.
Thank you, Dwayne.